I think the next topic does not really require an introduction. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you one. We're going to talk about generative AI, breakthroughs, what's happening, and what's the future. But enough talking. We have 5 fantastic speakers today who are honored us with their expertise, knowledge, and fantastic insights. So without further ado, I really would like to jump in, and I would like to ask our lovely speakers that please introduce yourself in a sentence or two. And given your background, which is extremely diverse, I would just die to know where are you from and in which angle you're going to represent in this conversation regarding generative AI. Ladies first.
My name is Eleana Kafeza, and I am a lead researcher at Technology Innovation Institute, TII. I would say that I represent the team that created the Falcon, which is an open source LLM system. And this is the angle that I will present. What were the challenges and what are the new models that are coming with respect to the foundation models?
Hello, my name is Hussein Gorbani. I'm from RLB. I work as AI developer there, and we work on internal operations and finding a way basically to save time and cost in the company.
Hi, I'm Lourens. I'm from Informa. So I'm a data scientist in the Iris team, and so we support the business really by helping the business to better understand the audience. So Informa is a business-to-business events management company. So for instance, this event is managed by Informa. So there'll be a lot of really great advancements in Gen AI. Last year, I spoke a bit about topic modeling here, which is more about understanding the audience. So this year, I'd like to tell you a bit more about how we put AI in the hands of our marketers and enable them to actually serve our clients.
Cool. Hi, my name is Frederik. I'm a senior data scientist at BP, where I work in our trading organization. And my accountability is basically to lead an ecosystem of AI and Gen AI systems where we develop solutions for our trading and shipping organization, basically trying to get the right information to the right person at the right time. Similar to Lourens, I was also talking last year here already, and we were diving into engineering challenges for Gen AI systems. So this year, even more exciting, we're diving into breakthroughs and challenges.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nadav Eiron. I'm Senior VP of Engineering at Crusoe Cloud. Crusoe is a vertically integrated AI infrastructure company. We do everything from sourcing the energy billing data center and providing AI cloud services. So I'm here to represent the infrastructure, in particular the software infrastructure point of view on generative AI.
Amazing. When I was preparing for this panel, I was so excited about the great diversity. It's not going to be just talking about the technology, just talking about the infrastructure, but a little bit of all. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Soma. I was your chair today, and I will be, and now I have the absolute privilege moderating this panel. I'm a co-founder and CEO at ETA Technologies, the first ever psychometric AI, which is measuring startups for investment purposes. But let's jump into this because we are all here to basically get more insights from our experts. My first question, because you all listed your experience, I would just die to know that given the latest development in generative AI over the past couple of years, how you approach projects in your own domain? Who would like to start? Please.
Yeah, myself, certainly. Thanks, Soma. So yes, I think there's been a lot of really great advancements in AI during the past year. I think for us, like I said, I'd like to focus on a project where we wanted to put AI really in the hands of our kind of colleagues and teams within Informa. So we created a chat application that allows them to chat in a safe environment with their documents. But one specific kind of like part of this kind of application that we developed was to create an application that the shareholders could use to interact with our annual reports. Now, I think you all know that annual reports aren't the most thrilling documents, so they're very long, 200 pages of tables and the like. So we wanted to create something that kind of engages them, that's interactive, where they can actually be excited about something that's very mundane. So what we came up with was an application that used the business. So there was a short video that was recorded of each section of the actual report. And then it kind of segued into like quizzes or questions and answers that was handed off to the AI that then kind of delved deeper into the reports. So this was it was a great success. Basically, you never see the 200-page document. You only saw these recordings and these little bits of like questions and answers, and you could go deeper into questioning the AI about these kind of issues, about the different issues regarding the report. So which provided a really great experience. So I mean, there were various challenges that we had to overcome. Obviously, accuracy. So these are like high-level business stakeholders. So you can't misrepresent information. It's also very specific domain, financial domain. They have difficult questions, so the reasoning really had to be good. And then also latency, so it couldn't take too long to answer questions because obviously they have limited time in their schedules and they needed to. So we managed to pull this off, and I'd like to tell you a bit more about that later.
Brilliant. Let's hear another domain. Please.
So from my perspective, what we are seeing is that with respect to the foundation models, we are seeing that the foundation models are becoming smaller. And I think there are lots of discussions in these forums about small models. So TII, I think, is leading the way on this with the Falcon H1 series, where we integrated the transformer architecture with MAMP architecture in order to get the best of two approaches, and at the same time, reduce the size while having competitive performance. So yes, we have a series of models, the Falcon H1 series, that are open source. Everybody can download and use them, and their performance really very nice. They are comparing especially the 3.5 billion parameters model, the deep model, compares with models that have much more parameter size, 7B or 10B. And that's the one direction that things are going, and this is state of the art. Just have foundation models that you can deploy in your laptop. And then the next direction that is really coming hot, I would say, it's the edge. All right, create foundation models that will be deployed in not laptops anymore, in phones or watches. So again, I think the AI is innovating here, and it produces the Falcon Edge series of model again, that they managed to reduce the memory footprint to 1 gigabyte and still have performance compared to 2.5 billion parameter model. So we can see clearly, I think, that what is coming is much more models that are going to become smaller and smaller, but with less compromise with respect to performance. And I think this trend is going to continue and move on. And these are the news from the foundation of models frontier.
Brilliant, brilliant. Nadav, I'm interested in what we can say from an infrastructure point of view about the domains.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're seeing, again, looking more at our customers coming and what they're asking when they deploy, I think we see more and more focus on the things that are actually around the AI infrastructure. So people are looking more into like, okay, I have bigger corporate data that I need to train on. How do I move them around? I have presence in multiple clouds. How do I make that work? What about security? What about manageability? So we're seeing more and more concerns that come in that are beyond the basics of like, okay, I need to train my model. I need access to GPUs, needs to work. And I think we see it evolving more into like an ecosystem of software, the way you would expect with like complex enterprise software systems, where really the model development is at the center of it, but it's just a small piece, and a lot of the complexity comes around it.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty similar actually to Lourens, where the way we choose models and how we want to build models at BP is very much value driven. So we want to tie in and choose our use cases very much on, does this provide business value? And when we do that, we want to make sure also that we choose the right approach for modeling, we choose the right evaluations for doing so in order to actually build the right solutions for our end customers. And what this can actually mean then is that depending on what type of use case you have, you might need something that gives you the right or relevant information very quickly. So something like a customer request query, something like being able to query a wiki or a knowledge base where you want to ask a question as a user and get very quickly a response, where it doesn't necessarily matter so much where that response in your knowledge base comes from, but it matters that you get a response that is relevant to your question. On the other hand, you might have applications where you want to go into the legal domain, regulatory domain, something like that, where you want to really look through tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of contracts or regulatory documents and pull out the information that is really the right one for your question, and not just the right information, but the right information from the right source for example, for contracts, that's really important that if you ask about a specific draft document, a specific revision of a regulatory document, you need to be sure that that information comes from that document that you're asking about. So by choosing or by being very aware of what your value case is for any given use case, that's how you can choose the right approach and how you build your models as well. For the first one, you may need really low latency. You might need the response within 10 seconds because otherwise your users will get bored and move on. For the latter use case where you want to get one specific information from a document, from a large corpus of documents, you might be willing to wait for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, kind of similar to a deep research type of application where you really pull through all of the different documents that you have and pull out the information because you know that your users are willing to wait for it because it might have taken them days to come up with that information if they had to review hundreds of documents themselves. And with that in mind, you can then also tailor your evaluation towards measuring what matters. And then that's how you drive your use cases.
It's brilliant. I'm sure that, in the Q&A, many people want to ask questions to dive deeper into this, but before this, Hussein.
I mean, from developer perspective, I think it is important, and I think I can see the shift as well. It's very important to consider the integratability of the system. As Nadav said, it is important. I mean, if you have any developers here, it's important to think ahead and see how we can utilize different LLMs and different AI systems and connect them in a way that tomorrow we wouldn't have that much of a challenge in terms of modifying the code or spending extra resources or allocating extra resources where would be very exponential for the business. And another point is, I think in terms of these agentic solutions that we have, we've got different libraries and different, open source solutions. The approach we take at RLB and with the colleagues is that what is the best for us in terms of should we go open source or closed source? And according to the scope of the project, we try to understand, well, this might be the best application and the best framework for us so that we can plan ahead and we can continue smoothly throughout the project.
It's very interesting, very informative answers which we received. However, in this panel, we want to talk about not just the breakthroughs and the positive, but what are the barriers. So my next question to you, that it's very, very good to hear all about this stuff. But on the other side, I'm keen to learn that what are the key challenges, the key obstacles, what you meet when you are trying to apply these state-of-art techniques which you shared with us in your own domain. Eleana, would you mind starting?
Yes, so when it comes to training these models, as I said, we have new architectures, and whatever we know so far does not really apply to these new solutions that are coming there. So you have to have new data sets that you have to develop. You have to develop new training strategies. And if with a new training strategy, you can, you can get better 20 or 30% accuracy in your model. But the data are also very important because then you can go 2 or 3 times more in your performance results. And then all of them have to be, use some good infrastructure and compute and code base that you do the implementation. And then you have to, fine tune all these parameters, and you have to think how to fine tune them because every time you model and you retrain, you actually cost. So you have to do this in a very nice way. So these are challenges that are coming, and in these challenges we can see them when we are developing the new foundation models. But then when it comes to also to the applications, right, where these models actually, it seems that it will help to create agentic solutions because, by deploying these LLMs in all these kind of devices, then agentic solution can be much more generic, and also the orchestration and their abilities are going to be increased. So I think that these challenges of how to integrate our this current trend of small models together with solutions that are actually effectively using them, it's very important. And one last thing to add, that these models for us are open source. And I just do and personally believe in open source because of this it enables to create an ecosystem where AI is for everybody and people can download and use this model. So I think this is a very critical part in whatever we're doing in the AI.
Very interesting. I'm keen to learn because you mentioned infrastructure a lot of time. Our in-house infrastructure expert, Nadav, what you have to say about the challenges and the obstacles from an infrastructure perspective?
Yeah. So I think one of the main things that I see looking at AI infrastructure the way it is today is just how rudimentary it is, right? The infrastructure we have today for AI, software infrastructure in particular, has been built for people who are researching, who are trying to expand the envelope of what AI can do. And when you try to do that, you want the maximum level of control and the maximum level of visibility into the bowels of the machine, so the minimum level of abstraction. But that's actually the wrong thing if you want to deploy something in the real world. As Hussein said before, I think it was you who said, but maybe it was you. Maybe both of you said that you need to think about the long-term life cycle of whatever it is that you're building, and how you're going to maintain it, how you're going to evolve it, and that requires abstractions and commonalities that we don't yet have in AI. And so those are some of the things that I think are the biggest obstacle to more adoption. I think AI today really requires a level of expertise that we should not expect of everybody to have. We talked about open source and how important it is to create an ecosystem by creating better abstractions so that everybody can develop AI applications. Hopefully we'll have many more people doing that, and with that, a lot more innovation, a lot more progress.
I think maybe I really like how you were talking about different abstractions, but then also how you can go into low-level knowledge of how your AI systems work. And that's actually something that is, for me as a developer, much more, or not much more, but in my specialty, a focus area. Because what we want to do, what a big challenge for us is to make sure that the systems that we develop are actually performing at a very high level as well. That might be more important for regulatory environments, for example, like trading, but even for different domains, we want to make sure that what we develop is actually meeting customer needs. And it's quite straightforward to these days develop a RAG chatbot with a vector database and get to 50, 60, maybe 70% accuracy. But these last 30%, that's what's really tough. And what we have found is actually that your ability to develop really good AI solutions quickly is a function of how good your ability to test your solution and assign good metrics to it is. So when you have an option to actually evaluate your system in a straightforward way, using well-defined metrics that are tracking with your value case, then you're able to make some code changes as you would with any ML model, and then evaluate it straight away, and after a couple of minutes get an output whether is this actually moving the needle in the right direction, are we moving at all, or are we even regressing with what we're doing. And that brings its own challenges, because first of all, how do you evaluate a Gen AI model? You can't just use a mean squared error like with a regression. And secondly, even when you do that, even when you have good methods and metrics for evaluating AI models, you still need a lot of data for it, so ground truth data essentially, that tells you that you get from SMEs and from your local business. And that data is hard to get by as well. It's expensive to get because you basically need to work really closely together with the business to get the right answers to what they're looking for. So with that, the challenge here is really working together, and the time consumption of actually, or the expense to actually get all of these prerequisites for good evaluations.
Lourens, what you have to say about it?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with what Fred's saying. We went through a very similar process. So basically, I mean, evaluation is very important. So I think that I've been in data science now for about 25 years. So I've been developing machine learning models for quite some time. And there definitely has been a massive increase in speed, in terms of how long it takes to develop. Which comes with problems because the evaluation has become more difficult. So, you find that it's quite easy these days for machine learning engineers, AI engineers to create models, but to evaluate them is less so. So, and, we found the same thing really, that we struggled with. We had to really get a very high level of accuracy. So, But what helped was that you could iterate with new Gen AI model tools like very quickly in parallel with several developers. If you have good evaluation kind of like systems, you can try a variety of things. So for instance, we started with fine tuning, looking at, increasing the accuracy of the results for, this chat application. We could quickly like build and test against an evaluation, like model that we built using ground truth, which took us a long time to build, but in any case we did. And then we could look at other things like, vision models. We used called Parley, that kind of obviated the need for basically doing very complex ingestion on PDF documents. And we could then also look at agentic frameworks all at the same time and evaluate them and then see what works best. In our case, we fine-tuned an open source DeepSeek model, which was really good at reasoning, and the results was frighteningly kind of accurate. Like, with RAG, if you get your kind of retrieval, sorted correctly, it was really quite impressive. But that didn't really, work with our costing. The Parley model had a bit latency issues that we struggled. So the agentic framework really worked. So we could like iterate through this literally within a month. And then, but the evaluation really is a tough kind of nut to crack to get that right. I think that's something that, definitely would need work going forwards. The frameworks we used, Rugas and Langsmith, are good, but they're very fragile. And you really have to do quite a bit of work to actually get them to do what you want. But then you do have to use, your business, and you do have to use your human kind of intuition combined with the testing frameworks. And then you can actually move quite quickly. It's just that you can't fully automate it.
Brilliant. Hussein, as a developer, what you have to say?
I think because the way AI advances every day and every month, if you had asked me last year, I would say probably the context window was a big problem for us. The amount of information basically you can put and give it to the AI so that it can understand. As I said, integratability was a big problem. Because we've got MCP and A2A protocols, which is a very new sort of a standardization, and it's basically in infancy at the moment. We as an organization and people in the industry, we are yet to explore and see whether it's a feasible option for us. Another point that I would like to mention is the reasoning capability of the AI models. When I think the challenge we have at the moment is when we have a literally agent-to-agent conversation and interaction, they still sometimes get confused whether they're following these certain prompts or certain strategy that is given by another, maybe manager AI or another swarm of AI. So I think the reasoning capability is a big problem. And as I was talking to Nadav earlier, Apple recently, they shared a paper, I guess, and it turns out their AI models, they're good with information generation, which is, it can be an image, it can be a word, audio sometimes, but it is struggling in terms of actually understanding a new problem, unless it is trained specifically for that certain games or tasks.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I think many of us, read the article or at least see the waves what it generated in the media. Now, let's talk about practical applications here, and allow me to ask not you but the audience: how many of you are entrepreneurs, business people here? Hands up. Business entrepreneurship. Great. How many of you are technical people with the developer background, operators? And what the rest is doing here, honestly. Anyway, so as an entrepreneur, if you don't mind my morbid curiosity, what I'm interested in is the future. And I believe that whether from a technical or an entrepreneurial perspective, you're also interested in this. So I would like to ask our experts that, what do you believe is going to be the next big AI advancement, and how businesses, small businesses, startups, scale-ups, they can prepare to make the most of those opportunities which are coming?
Okay, is that so? As I said, I think that this ambient AI thing is going to come, and it's going to be everywhere because technically We have enabled this kind of technologies. We have made it open source. So that will create, as I said, an initiative that will let a lot of applications and a lot of people to integrate them using agentic AI, and eventually the reasoning problem, we are working on that, will be also addressed. Either with algorithmic learning or whatever reinforcement learning. One of these policies in the end will provide a much more solid solutioning in the reasoning part. And what I see in the future, and I think that will be the most value, especially for small and medium enterprises, is that all this integration and all these specialists' abilities that are needed now to do some tasks will be evaded from the user. So the user will have the opportunity just asking an LLM a very generic question, right? Is the market in Germany mature enough for my business to enter? And then all these technical things that they have to be done, they will be done by the agentic AI, and it will just provide a solution. So that will bring, and you can see, think also for space things, for space technology usage. So people need really to be very expert to use some tools when you're doing, or even in cybersecurity. So what is coming now is that all these tools are going to be automated through AI agents. And I think what is going to be a revolution, it will be that the user will not have to know anything. We just put a general purpose query in the LLM, and then he will get the answer. I think this will change the whole image of what people can do and cannot do.
I'm not sure I'm afraid or I admire this future, to be honest with you, but I'm eager to learn from a developer perspective. Hussein, what do you think?
I think I think there are lots of next big things, I would say. But starting from the current, I think the current challenge we were discussing earlier is the whole AI solutions. At least majority of them are task oriented or process oriented. For example, as a developer, I'm pretty sure you know about Cursor, Windsurf, GitHub Copilot, and there are so many open source versions as well and alternatives. I think the problem with them is they are tasks focused. They are there to help you with your task rather than with you. And what does that mean? It means that as a developer, at the end of the day, you want to obviously learn and advance in your field, right? You don't want to, because you use the tool, and I'm pretty sure some of you had this challenge as well. I myself had it. When you rely too much on an IDE that is powered by AI, you actually become a tool, meaning you understand there is an error and you just copy and paste or click the button and so on and so forth. You just expect it to fix it for you. However, if the process was a human sort of focused, where somehow at the end of the day, at the end of each task, it actually reports it for you or visualize in a way that actually this was your problem and this is how you could fix it later on if you have it in the future. I think that could be one of the next big things. So human focus. And number two is, again, it's a human focus, is embodied AI. I think it will be using generative AI models for sure, and maybe a field of robotics as well, where we've got AI powered systems, a physical system that actually interacts with us. And I think it will be a case after 3 to 5 years where we have robots and machines walking around providing us a guidance or advice on certain tasks. So I think that is the shift we are seeing in the AI field.
That's brilliant. Lourens?
Yeah, I think I do agree with both Hussein and Eleana. I think from my experience with developing this application using agentic AI, my eyes were really opened. My money was on the fine tuning or maybe something like a vision transformer in terms of getting accuracy down for a very kind of well-defined domain. But the agentic solution in the setting really worked extremely well. It really through reflection and planning, the accuracy improved tremendously in terms of the model, way beyond my kind of wildest kind of dreams. So I do think there's a lot of legs in agentic AI. I do think currently we only see really applications currently in marketing relating to chat applications, but in terms of actuation, like Hussein has spoken, taking actions, maybe automating campaigns or actually doing something that operationally has meaning. I think there's probably going to be more of that going forwards. It might not look exactly like what we see now, but a lot of the other advancements. So we use multimodal AI also in our solution, combining both text and images. Adding vision to that, adding sound to that. Once you've got a kind of transformers that can do all of that together, within an agentic framework, I think the kind of the scope of what you can do in terms of automatic content generation, optimizing for search, SEO, search engine optimization. Within the marketing area, there's a lot of scope to basically improve and build, like infrastructure that actually, operationally improves based on evolving on what we have currently. This is what I kind of see. There's a lot of scope for that.
Yeah, I think maybe just following on and expanding on what you just said. In general, with Gen AI, we tend to think of chatbots and question and answering systems. But actually, we're on the one hand seeing that our ability of building question answering systems is increasing very, very quickly with better models. We can, I think, safely agree that an O1 or O3 based model performs much better than GPT 3.5 did 2 years ago. But at the same time, we're seeing that our systems really depend on the data that is underneath and that is feeding them. And we're seeing that the models that we have now are very quickly becoming better at supplementing different tasks, such as named entity recognition, such as understanding and preparing data, processing data, making sure that actually it's not just we're getting better at using models to create answers, but we're getting to a point where we can use these models very well to pre-process that data, to build better data models for us, to also advise what kind of data model would be better for that. And that doesn't have to be a Gen AI model like O3 to do that. We can use transformer models similar to what Eleana was saying earlier. We can use BERT-like models for that. And we can just bring together this suite of AI capabilities that we have and make a chatbot or make Gen AI solutions that aren't just a chatbot that brings you value by giving you information, but rather that are incorporated in the whole life cycle.
We heard a lot about marketing and chatbots. Nadav, I'm really interested in that. With the infrastructure, you will have a complete different point of view.
Actually, I'm going to expand on what others have said, and I'm going to disappoint you here, Soma.
Damn.
So, looking back a little bit, AI has moved so quickly in terms of the core technologies over the past 5 years, and we talk about it kind of like being the basis for, the fourth industrial revolution. I'm looking forward to the ripple effects of that really, reaching all industries, all efforts of civilization, et cetera. We talked about robotics, we talked about edge, but I like what you said, Fred. It's not about a chatbot, right? Like AI is about so much more. And I think while we're expanding, while we're finding new models, while we're finding new architectures, while we're finding new capabilities, there's so much potential in what AI has come to be able to do to this day that we have not yet been able to make great use of. We've been able to make okay use of, but I would say it's far from fulfilling the promise of even the technologies we have today. And so I'm really, really excited about seeing how we put the technology to use.
Yeah, well, this is excellent way of finishing. And now I would like to turn to the audience. Generative AI is one of the hottest topics nowadays. What are your questions to our experts? Please raise your hands. Any questions? Don't be shy. They look very serious, but they are not. I can assure you about this. I had a lunch with them. Any questions? Literally about anything. Yes. True entrepreneurial spirit. What's your question? The microphone is coming.
I can just speak loudly. That's okay.
That's perfect.
It's a question for Nadav, and thank you very much for your time. Can you talk a little bit about, given your experience, how important is latency in data centers now versus in 5 years, and in particular, if you have any take on Europe and the UK?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, before I did infrastructure for AI, I used to work in other infrastructure spaces for other applications. I would say AI to date has been, compared to other applications we've seen on the internet, very latency insensitive. Primarily because the amount of processing that we do per user interaction is so high that, the latency of the network is usually not that severe. We talked about, I think even when we talk about, low latency applications, I think some of you mentioned, it's in the order of seconds. It's not in the order of milliseconds. I think it is going to be interesting, again, when we start to apply it, how that will work. And from our customers today, we see the same thing, like latency is just starting to be something you talk about, and it's at the scope of like, okay, 100 milliseconds is okay. I think it will change as we try to apply AI to other things, and it definitely going to be something that we will need to deploy more infrastructure closer to the user. I can't tell you how many years it is in the future, but we're not quite there yet for sure.
If I can maybe just add to that, I think from our kind of experience too, it was quite funny. We struggled quite a lot with the vision transformers because it took quite a while to come to the answer. But a lot of those kind of problems can be solved with their interface. So basically, just kind of stating, what the system is busy doing. Sometimes kind of distracts the user from the fact that they're waiting to something valuable is happening. And then it makes it worthwhile for them to wait a bit. I mean, obviously, there's a window. Like I say, it's not the order of milliseconds. It's you can get away with quite a few seconds if you have a clever interface to kind of hide that.
Any more questions? Yes, we have time for one more.
Sorry, do you mind repeating it?
Yes, so the question actually has two parts. Number one, that when you look at a project, how you determine that it needs generative AI and how you can justify the return on investment when you deploy this to the project, if I understood it correctly. Yeah.
So I think it's a really good question, and my approach to that would always be to use traditional ML whenever it is possible. And the biggest reason for that is transparency. Like with linear models or even with nonlinear models, like it's much simpler to understand what the model is doing and why it's doing it, and also much simpler to then evaluate it and decide whether or not this is what we want to do. Similarly, many tasks that we do, I think we touched very quickly on that. Not everything has to be a chatbot. And in the last couple of years, we've seen a proliferation of chatbots, that everything kind of wants to be a chatbot. Everything wants to use Gen AI. But actually, for many problems, we might want to not use Gen AI, but rather simplify or restructure the problem into sub-problems. And then we can use traditional ML models to answer that question. So, for example, many things when we talk about text classification might actually rely on first named entity recognition and then classification based on that. So by just reframing that problem, we can then use traditional AI or traditional ML as opposed to Gen AI to solve the same problem, be able to really measure each individual step, how well it's working, and then apply that. On the other hand, there are problems that simply we can't use traditional ML because it isn't built for it. Maybe summarization or really deep reasoning are good examples for that. For these problems, we would want to use Gen AI, but here again, we want to really make sure that what we're using Gen AI for is the value driver of our use case. If we're just using Gen AI to do something that either we don't need high accuracy or isn't the value driver for it, it is quite expensive for these kind of things, or at least at an enterprise level, the cost can mount up quite quickly. So you always want to be looking at it from a value lens.
Fantastic. I would like to ask a huge applause to our experts today.